Yay Networks.
Welcome to the Great Girlfriends podcast, where we discuss life, love, laughter, and everything in between. I'm your host, Sybil Amuti, and I can't wait for you to hear all of the Great Girlfriend magic on today's show. So without further ado, grab something great to drink, grab your pen and your paper, and get ready for this week's episode. Enjoy. Happy Wednesday, Great Girlfriends. Boy, oh boy, are you going to feel like I felt when you feel seen and heard by a book that was not written about you, but was written for you. And maybe it was written about you. Maybe the author did know that you would need to hear some of the things that were being spoken. I'm holding one of those dear pieces, and I'm excited to bring the conversation with an author forward to you, Dr. Susan Peirce Thompson, who is an adjunct associate professor of brain and cognitive sciences at the University of Rochester and an expert in the psychology of eating. Oh my gosh, I hate the work that she does. She is president of the Institute for Sustainable Weight Loss and the founder of the worldwide Bright Line Eating movement. Her first two books, including Bright Line Eating, The Science of Living Happy, Thin, and Free, became New York Times bestsellers and instant Hay House favorites. Her work weaves the neuroscience of food addiction with powerful insights from positive psychology, IFS, and 12-step recovery to outline a roadmap for achieving true integrity and self-authorship around food. That is such a beautiful line, self-authorship around food. The Bright Line Eating mission is to help 1 million people around the globe discover lasting food freedom. Oh my God, this language, food freedom, and have their bright transformations by 2025. Dr. Thompson, your work must keep you very busy.
Hi, Sybil. It does. Indeed, it does. Indeed, it does.
Hello, busy lady. My goodness, what powerful work. I mean, there were lines in there that just already punctured me. When you start talking about food freedom, right?
Yeah.
And then that alone, and you start talking about the neuroscience of food addiction. And when I look at the stats in America around obesity and our addiction and relationship with food and sugars, I imagine there's never a dull moment for you in the work that you do. And then there's this powerful book that is also ultra important to how we see ourselves and our relationships with food.
I'm so glad you loved it. It's really gratifying for me to see you resonate with that book so much. It was definitely a labor of love. And my first book, Bright Line Eating, the two together, I think, are really quite an experience for people who need it. You know, it's so interesting when you resonate with the notion of food freedom, and other people who don't need food freedom, they're like, what do you mean? And I'm like, well, that's because you're low, very low on the food addiction susceptibility scale. Whereas those of us who are higher on that, scale of susceptibility to the pull of those addictive foods, we know exactly what we're talking about food freedom and self-authorship with food, because we've watched ourselves become enslaved, over the years, like eating in ways we didn't want to be eating, thinking about our food or our weight too much, losing control over how much we eat once we start to eat certain foods, not feeling satisfied by a regular amount of food, watching other people just go, no, I'm good, I'm full. And just thinking, why don't I sort of feel full the way other people feel full? Watching people take one bite of a dessert and eat it so slowly and then push away the whole rest of the dessert plate and go, oh no, I don't want any more. That just really hit the spot. That's all I need. Just one. I mean, whoever needs more than one bite? I'm like, me?
I'm like, what a waste. You just wasted a whole cheesecake. Yeah, that's me. I'm judging.
So, it's those of us who really have gone down that rabbit hole with food. We need it. Food freedom. It's a big deal.
Yeah. Okay. What I feel and see is that we have inherited habits, right? And we've inherited relationships with food that, we picked up as children, and we don't even understand the why behind it. And then we become adults that are navigating our own food journey and self-authorizing, and trying to decide what makes sense for us. And we find that it's so hard to disrupt those patterns. And then some of us have kids. And it gets crazy because the way you thought you were heavy, then you have kids and you realize what a joke it was to feel that. And then you hit your 40s.
Kids. Yeah.
And it just, and so I don't know, where do we find our footing with our relationship, Dr. Thompson? Like,
Oh
where do we
gosh.
start?
Yeah, well, let me tell a story that illustrates some of what you just said, right? That, we
Okay.
were kids and we developed habits, we developed a relationship with food. I have three daughters. And
Mhm.
my youngest, Maya, I don't remember why I didn't have the other two, but I only had my youngest at the time. She was
Uh-huh.
like 2 years old. Okay. And a girlfriend was in town from Australia. I used to live in
Mhm.
Australia. So a girlfriend was in town, and we drove with my 2 year old to Niagara Falls. So we
Mhm.
drive an hour away. We see the falls. We're walking all around. We're pushing her in the stroller. She's getting out of the stroller. She's walking. We walk back to the car, and she doesn't want to leave yet. My 2 year old, she does not want to get clicked into the car seat, but we got to go. And so I'm trying to click Maya into the car seat, and she's doing the thing. I don't know if you ever had a kid like do
Go
the full
limp.
court, like, well, no, she was doing the yoga bridge on me. She was
Oh,
like
yes.
not letting me click her in, right? She was like, yeah, exactly. And I'm trying to like smush her into this car seat, right? And she's screaming bloody murder. "Ah!" And I'm trying to like get her into this car seat. And my friend like takes the bag of food that we packed for the day and grabs a little baggie of bunny crackers and raisins and like
Uh-huh.
throws it over at me to like, here, and I look at it and I throw it on the ground. Like, I don't need that right now. I finally click Maya into the car seat. And as we're driving away, I take a deep breath and I turn to my friend and I say, can I offer some constructive feedback, like a perspective? And she's like, yeah. And I know her really well. So I knew that would be
Mhm.
okay. And I said,
Yeah.
Maya wasn't hungry. Maya was angry. Maya was
Mhm.
upset, right? And you suggested that I offer her food right then, right?
Mhm.
Like not just food, but food made out of flour and, a sweetened, like a really sweet fruit, right? Like
Mhm.
I was like, I don't want to pair those things for my kid. Like,
Mm.
here's some food to get over your feelings right now, right? And I said, I'm just going to offer that food for thought, that like that was exactly the wrong moment to feed your kid. So
Mhm.
so it's just an illustration of how, Maya's two, we don't really start forming autobiographical memories till we're four, right? She wouldn't have even
Mhm.
remembered that,
Yeah.
but it would have been wired in as, a cause effect cue response sort of thing in her psyche. So
Yeah.
absolutely, absolutely. And who
Wow.
knows how many times that happened for us, to us as kids, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, I'm an '80s kid, so I'm from the Clean Plate Club, like,
I'm an 80s kid
that was
too. Yep.
yeah,
I'm
so there
47
was
years old.
that. Yeah,
Yep.
so there's that Clean Plate Club, and there's the buffet years where, you went to the buffet and you just had a blast, like, filling up on food, and I'm also a Southern girl, and there's so much fellowship that's centered around
Yeah.
health, not even healthy, but hearty plates of food,
Yes.
gathering over sweet, decadent foods, gathering over scrumptious potatoes and gravies and fried and all the things.
Yeah.
Um, all of which were an inheritance of, and those things equal connection, they equal love, they equal a center point for, holidays. So imagine that we grow up and we learn more and we go back and introduce like roasted Brussels sprouts to grandma. Grandma's like, you changed, you went north and you got, all the things, like they're not trying to hear that, right? Or
Yeah.
you want to steam things, you don't want to overcook the greens. And, so
Yeah.
there's so much that we have to learn and do, but where do we start with that learning? Let me just, first of all, great girlfriends, let me raise this book again. REZOOM is a great
Mm.
start for understanding just what you mentioned, the story with Maya, and that immediate correlation that anger will be eased with some bunny crackers and some raisins. And for me, that would be some Oreos and ice cream, right? Like
Mhm.
that.
Sure.
So disrupting some of the associations that we have placed in our life and have given us sort of a sense of comfort and way of easing pain,
Yeah.
but where do we start? Because we go to the grocery store, we do what we know. If you
Totally.
don't know better,
Yep. And
you certainly
we've all
can't.
got our routines. You look at
Yeah.
indigenous peoples, and there still are a few hunter-gatherer societies around the world, and they don't eat
Hmm.
that many foods, and we don't either.
Hmm.
We're all in our routines. We eat sort of the same things, and really learning to do different is a pattern interrupt. It's about doing different. I mean, my way is I teach people how to do it really different. People who are at the end of the road of like a road that doesn't work, right? It really is a dead end. And I teach people how to get on a fundamentally entirely different road. So yes, it does mean learning to roast Brussels sprouts, and it does mean learning to steam your greens. And for many people, it takes a long time to get to the place where you're ready to do that, because for all the reasons you mentioned, and then some, it's really hard to swim upstream from the way our society does food. But it's not going well, right? It's not going well. Obesity is over 42%. 20 years ago, it was at 22%. I mean, we are skyrocketing into dangerous territory, right? The costs of obesity are, coming up on a big chunk of GDP. Like we are spending more on what we're doing to our bodies. 80% of all COVID deaths were related to obesity, right? Like we are really, really not getting away with it the way we think we are. And for some of us for whom it's like, it really is addiction, we watch ourselves sort of die on the inside with the way we're eating, and we know we got to stop. So I help people do it really different. And, there's other ways to approach it. You don't have to do bright line eating. You don't have to approach it the way I teach people to, but that's kind of what I know, because that's where I come from. I come from a pretty extreme situation with drugs and drug addiction and with food addiction. So I help people get out of that nightmare.
Let's take a quick second and just celebrate this week's sponsor for the podcast. Hey, great girlfriends, it's time to do some good looking, clean cooking with Caraway and be one of the plus 25,000 people who have raved about Caraway's kitchen. Now it's time to try for yourself. It's time to ditch the chemicals with Caraway Home's non-toxic cookware and bakeware collections so that you can make healthier cooking a piece of cake. Caraway Home's non-toxic kitchenwares are all designed for the modern home and feature a chemical-free ceramic coating so food can be prepared with peace of mind that no hard-to-pronounce compound will leach into your healthy ingredients. All of the beautiful sets come equipped with easy-to-access storage solutions so that no stacking is required. Gone are the days of misplacing your lids, and shout out to Caraway for giving us this really cute collection that is so organized and compacted for the woman like me who does not want a crazy kitchen. So here's what you get in your cookware set: a modern and chemical-free iteration of the traditional 16 set, boiled down to 4 essentials. You have your fry pan, your saute pan, your saucepan, and your Dutch oven. So cheers to non-toxic, easy cooking, eco-friendly, well-loved cookware for each and every single one of you great girlfriends. Now it's time to get yours. Visit carawayhome.com/greatgirlfriends to take advantage of this limited time offer for 10% off of your next purchase. This deal is exclusive for listeners, so visit carawayhome.com/greatgirlfriends or use code GREATGIRLFRIENDS at checkout. Caraway, non-toxic cookware made modern. All right, so Dr. Thompson, you talked a bit about your history, and so this is a very personal work for you. This is not just, the research. This is you really diving into proactive ways that you can reframe your legacy. I love the ownership, the authorship here. So I want you to, if you don't mind, just share a little bit of your story and what led you to self-author your entire relationship as you develop this. And now your mission, which I think is so powerful and so essential.
Thank you. Yeah, totally. I come by this work so honestly. It's just the way I came up. So I wasn't a heavy kid, but by the age of 11, I weighed more than I weigh now. And I was super concerned about my weight by the time I was 13. I took a different path to handle that. I started doing drugs. Actually, I started experimenting with drugs, and then it just escalated from there, from alcohol, pot, and psychedelics onto crystal methamphetamine, onto cocaine, onto crack cocaine. I dropped out of high school. I started prostituting myself. And by the age of 19, I was just living in a loop from the streets back to the crack house, out to the streets again, and back into the crack house. And so when I was 20 years old, mercifully, I got struck clean and sober, and I haven't had a drink or a drug in 27 years. Super grateful for that.
Yes.
And that is thanks to a 12-step program and a higher power and I still go to meetings, and
Yeah.
I did pack on a lot of weight in my first
Uh-huh.
year clean and sober. I knew I would, and it climbed from there. And I was obese by my mid 20s, and I
Mm.
couldn't figure out how to tackle the food addiction the way I'd handled the drug addiction. It didn't, I did go to 12-step food programs. There are a lot of them. I went to many of them, and it's really hard to figure out exactly where the bright lines are, if you will. Like,
Mhm.
what exactly is the first drink, right? If you're trying to
Mhm.
not have the first drink, what is it when it's food?
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
and you have to eat to live, but you don't have to eat donuts to live. You don't have to eat Oreos and ice cream to live.
You
So,
don't? No, I'm joking.
technically. So, but where's the line, right? And
Yeah.
I did end up losing my excess weight when I was 28. Meanwhile, I should back up
Mhm.
because, you can function as a food addict. Some
Mhm.
alcoholics function and stuff. Not many crack addicts function that well,
That's
but
right.
you can function with food addiction. And I did more than function. I went to community college in California. I transferred to UC Berkeley, crushed it there, got 4.0s and spoke at the graduation. When I graduated, got into
Wow.
every graduate school I applied to, went to one of the top 3 schools in the world in my field, brain and cognitive sciences, got my Ph.D, did a postdoc in Australia, came back to the States and was a psychology professor for 16 years, and ended up teaching a college course in the psychology of eating and the neuroscience of
Mhm.
food addiction, as well as
Mhm.
positive psychology and cognitive psychology and all sorts of other things. So I lost my excess weight when I was 28, and I got introduced to eating no sugar, no flour, weighing and measuring my food, 3 meals a day, a very, very structured way of eating. But I got introduced to it from a group that was very sort of unwavering in its approach, and not something.
Mhm.
It wasn't a group that was growing, because they were super rigid in how they did, and it just, most people wouldn't join a group like that. But I
Mhm.
started to really look into what the bright lines are for food if you want to get the kind of peace like that I have around drugs and alcohol. I don't think about it. I haven't had a drink
Mhm.
in 27 years. I don't think twice about it. New Year's Eve comes,
Wow.
I party without alcohol. It's not a problem.
Yeah.
And a lot of people probably can relate to being a former smoker and not
Yeah.
thinking about cigarettes anymore, particularly, where it's not easy at first. It's hard, but you can live
Mhm.
without it. And once you're really past it, you're pretty past it. Maybe
Mhm.
once every year or two, you have to fight off a thought, like, oh, I kind of would like a cigarette right now, but you
Yeah.
don't have one, and you move on, you survive.
Mhm.
So that's kind of my story. I ended up doing this bright line eating thing because in my morning meditation back almost 8 years ago now, I heard a message in my morning meditation, which was to write a book called Bright Line Eating. And I started
Mm.
working on getting a book deal, and that led to me starting an online email list. And since then, 1.7 million people maybe have signed up for that email list. And people started writing me back saying, well, how do I eat out? How do I feed my kids? How do I
Yeah.
travel? And I knew that
Yeah.
they needed a course. I was already teaching online courses at the time. So I
Mhm.
started an online course, and that turned into the Brightline Eating membership. And now, there's people all over the world doing this thing called Brightline Eating. So it just exploded. So I handed back tenure. I'm not actively a professor anymore, although I do still
Mhm.
have an appointment on the faculty at the University of Rochester. And mostly I do
Mm.
research on Brightline Eating. And we're finding, interestingly, when people take when people who have an addictive tendency toward food take a
Yeah.
really structured approach to their eating, they lose weight and achieve food freedom at remarkable rates.
Mm.
Remarkable. And in our
Mhm.
program, people keep their weight off. It's not just that they lose their weight, their excess weight, they keep it off long term for
Wow.
years. Um,
Wow.
and it's the difference of, hey, well, if you're addicted to those cigarettes, you're going to do better if you really take a bright line approach. A bright line is a
Mhm.
boundary. It's a clear boundary that you never cross, even if you're at a
Mhm.
concert, even if, they're making grits and gravy and you want some, whatever. Yeah.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
Oh, grits and gravy. Um, I've got a huge question for you, but I just want to take a quick second to salute this week's sponsor for the podcast. So, great girlfriends, I have a question for you. How many of you thought the AARP was just for seniors like your mom and my mom, who happens to be a longstanding member of the AARP? Well, if you're like me, you thought it was just for seniors and that all the benefits were designated for your mom and your mom's friend, and all her other great girlfriends. But I have news for you. It's not just about getting old. The AARP is all about creating exciting benefits for everyday lifestyles for people like me and like you. So there's so much that goes inside of the advantages of the AARP. There's so many benefits that you can grab as a great girlfriend. I'm going to start with one of my favorites. You got the job board and resume advisor, and that is for every great girlfriend who's seeking the best out of her career. You've got 61% average savings on prescription drugs not covered by Medicare. You've got family caregiving support. You've got driver safety tips. You've got instant access to news and community events. And you have discounts on thousands of hotels nationwide, because who doesn't like a good vacation with a discount? So there's so many benefits that come at very little cost. And we are all officially invited to be members of the AARP. Try these benefits for yourself. Go to aarp.org/great girlfriends to join for just $12 for your first year with automatic renewal. You'll get a second membership for free, plus AARP the magazine and a free gift. That's aarp.org/great girlfriends. All right, so Dr. Thompson, this is just my street observation, right? Just the way I have had to make some choices, or not had to, but I've chosen to choose in a lot of
Uh-huh.
circumstances.
Yep. I
Just
feel you.
I chose to choose, which is we tend to be so much more reactive around food choices than we could be proactive. Even in the grocery store, one of the tips that someone told me many moons ago was never go hungry, because next thing you know, you've got
Mhm.
chips and all the sweets things in your basket, and you don't even know what you're going to eat for dinner. Then you buy fast food after the grocery store because you're exhausted. And it goes on and on from there. And even a lot of people will want to reverse engineer health as a result of a diagnosis, disease in their body, being told that they're now having to live off of pills and their own medications, and they want to reverse something that they've seen in their body. And I don't know if it's just an American way, but that culture of being reactive around food,
Mm.
even with that example with Maya, there was anger. Therefore, the reaction was to comfort that
Peter.
anger.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, but what I'm hearing you say is proactive implementation, success, food freedom comes with structure. It comes with
Yes.
pre-planning. It comes with intention.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes,
So jump into
totally.
that for me.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, one of the cardinal rules, tools, pieces of guidance that I give people is write down your food the night before. Write down what you're going to eat the
Ooh,
night before. When I go to the grocery store,
it's
I know how
good.
many pieces of fruit I need for the week. I know how many pieces of fruit I
Wow.
will eat that week. I eat 14 pieces of fruit a week, one for lunch, one for dinner,
Wow.
one for breakfast, one for lunch.
Uh-huh.
And so, grocery shopping becomes a whole different thing when you know exactly what you eat during the week. So, I'm not asking people to make that up. I teach you how to do it. I tell you what you're going to eat. I mean, in Bright Line Eating, we eat every whole real food. So it's not like there's any
Mhm.
foods that are off limits. Lots of foods that other people think are foods are off limits.
Mhm.
But
Mhm.
potato chips aren't a food. Let's get real, right? Just because they have calories and they're edible doesn't mean that they're a
Don't
food,
break me
right?
down today. Just don't break.
Potatoes are a food and you can eat them in Bright Line Eating,
Well,
things
what
that
if you
come out
chip
of.
it? What if you just run it through some oil and just chip it?
So
Oh my
the
goodness.
thing about being proactive is willpower doesn't
Yeah.
show up for us reliably when it comes to anything, but especially food. And that has to
Mhm.
do with how the brain works. There's this little part of the brain back behind the forehead called the anterior cingulate cortex. And it's kind of a
Mhm.
gatekeeper that's trying to govern simultaneously all kinds of things: decision making and emotional regulation and impulse control and resisting temptation and monitoring task performance. And this little part of the brain gets fatigued, like utterly exhausted to the point of being useless after 15 minutes of intense
Ooh.
activity,
Uh-huh.
and it leaves us vulnerable, right? So this is
Mhm.
why no matter how sincere we were when we swore that we were now going to follow XYZ healthy way of eating, Friday night comes after sitting in traffic, after figuring out, getting the kids from daycare, whatever it is we're doing, we now turn to our partner and we say, let's order a pizza, right? And we know that's not on the plan, but what happened is we just fell into the willpower gap. And that gap is going to be there for us all the time. So there is one way around it, the willpower gap. And the way is to not use that part of the brain at all when it comes to food. I teach people to eat like they brush their teeth, right? I don't know. It's not everybody, but it's about 95% of the population that successfully brush their teeth morning and night, regardless, right? Doesn't matter if they're sick or traveling or it's New Year's Eve and you've been out really late at a party or whatever. You brush your teeth.
Yeah.
You just brush your teeth, right? And you do it because the time of day cue and the location cue and the sequence of activities that you're doing to put yourself to bed or to wake up and start the day cue you to do it in the same way at the same time. And you just do it. I teach people to eat that way. When I come down for breakfast, my digital food scale comes out, my bowl goes on it, my oatmeal goes in there, the blueberries are getting measured, the nuts go on there, and I'm assembling breakfast the same way that I brush and floss my teeth before going to bed at night. And that's the part of the brain that's governing it, right? And so this is why 6 small meals a day don't work, just like none of us would successfully brush and floss 6 times a day. We just wouldn't have the equipment with us. We wouldn't be prepared. We would forget. We would get into the flow of the day doing other things. Automaticity only works when it's really pinpointed by a specific time of day, not too often, morning and night. And then this one magical time midday when people stop and sort of think about getting a bite to eat. You have your lunch packed with you and boom, you open up your cooler box and you've got your lunch. It's really that simple. But it's a system that I teach people to set up and it doesn't fail. It's really, really effective. Yeah.
Wow. So some listener is going to go, is that OCD? Is that obsessive compulsive? One or two listeners might ask that question of,
if that was required,
that's discipline though.
Because it's not, it's automaticity. They're different.
Okay.
They're different.
Okay.
Yeah. I mean,
so tell me the difference in those two. Yeah. How is it?
Yeah, totally. So, discipline is stuff you have to apply kind of all day long. Automaticity kicks in when you're backing your car out of the driveway and your muscles just know what to do, right? It doesn't actually take any cognitive resources after you've learned the sequence.
That this is the sequence.
Yeah.
I see.
Yeah.
Okay. Pause for the cause. That's good. I love that. I love that. Okay. I want to know what a food addicted human looks like. Like what are their behaviors? What are some of the things that we see? Because some people may not know or recognize that there is a wrong relationship, an addictive relationship there. So what does what do we look like when we're food addicted?
Totally. Well, first of all, we can be any age, we can be any gender, any race, any weight. Actually, 22% of people at a normal BMI test out as full-blown food addicts, 22%. So we could be at any weight. The two biggest categories for people being likely to be addicted to food are the people with extreme morbid obesity and the people who are underweight. Interestingly, underweight is also a high predictor. So what the behaviors look like is thinking about it all too much, what you've eaten or not eaten, whether you're on your plan or off your plan, how many miles, how many calories, how many pounds. Oh my gosh. So anyone who's really noticing that they think about all that too much, that's a sign. Not feeling satisfied by a regular meal, a regular amount of food, wanting to keep eating, losing control over how much you eat once you start eating, especially certain foods, but it could just be eating at all. Being someone who definitely just kind of keeps going, even when your stomach might be starting to feel stretched out, your elbow wants to bend, your mouth still wants to chew. What else? Some people, but not all people, binge. People who have food addiction. So that means eating way more food than someone would typically eat with a feeling of feeling out of control and in a very short period of time, like really packing it in a short period of time. So those are some of the signs and symptoms. Not feeling satisfied, losing control, thinking about it all too much, maybe binging. Having cravings is the other major sign. So if there are specific foods that you go out of your way to get, If you find yourself walking up and down grocery store aisles or convenience store aisles thinking, what would hit the spot? Like you're on the prowl for a
Mm.
certain kind of hit, right? You're looking
I've
for
been
food to
there.
deliver a certain something, right?
Yeah, yeah,
Not just looking for fuel. This isn't like,
yeah.
oh, my stomach
Like
is grumbling and
this will do it.
yeah,
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 yeah.
exactly. So those are the signs of a brain that
Wow,
has been wired for food addiction.
wow. Okay, you've given us so much to think about, and I feel like some people feel seen, by that last bit we just talked about in food addiction, because you don't know what you don't know, and the neuroscience of it, we definitely feel like the average human just would not know because we're not studied and we're not wired to see those things. But that's why a book such as this one is so important. REZOOM really does help us understand the construct, the science in our bodies that's actually at work, or that needs to be trained and wired. I do
Mhm.
want to talk about this one last piece. There is this sugar. I want
Mm.
to deal with sugar for a second, because I know, all the books and all the research tells us that sugar is the super predator, that sugar hits your body and it takes effect like
Yeah.
cocaine,
Yep.
and that there's
It
this
does.
heavy sugar. It does, and right, and there's heavy
Yeah,
sugar
it does.
addiction in the U.S. specifically, and preservatives are indicative of, preservatives. Are sugar based, and that helps to even perpetuate it even further in our lives and in our kids. So, can you touch a bit on what you've seen as it relates to sugar? Because I think more than anything else, if we could cut that relationship with sugar, I feel that it would be a gateway for us to bright line
Yeah.
eat and
Yeah.
be consistent at doing so.
Yeah. Well, 80% of the calories in the supermarket are laced with added sugar. 80% of
Mm,
them. So it's just gotten into just about everything. I mean, if you're
yeah.
not in the produce aisle, there's probably sugar in what you're about to buy. And it's the number one culprit. It is absolutely the number one
Okay.
culprit. I would say a few things. Number one is artificial sweeteners aren't helpful.
Hmm.
When it comes to addiction, the sweet taste buds on the tongue actually have direct connections to the addictive centers of the brain. So
Mm,
all the sucralose and the stevia, even people think, oh, well, stevia doesn't dysregulate your glucose system. And it's true, but the sweet taste buds are already kicking in your brain and so so that's one thing, is
hmm.
don't go substituting with artificial sweeteners. Whole real fruit is fine. I know there's a lot of people out there, the carb mania and all that, afraid to eat a banana. Settle down. You can have whole real fruit. Whole real fruit is great. Absolutely
Okay.
eat your berries, eat your apples, eat your whole real fruit, but avoid fruit
Yeah.
juice and avoid dried fruit, right? Raisins, right? Just think about how many dried apricots you can eat. If I asked you to eat 10 whole apricots, you'd probably have a hard time, but 10 dried
Mhm.
apricots, you want a few more. So,
That's right.
yep, so avoid dried fruit and take my quiz to know, well, the quiz to know how susceptible to food addiction your brain is. Foodaddictionquiz.com. So go to
Mhm.
foodaddictionquiz.com, and it's a quiz from 1 to 10. You're going to find out on a scale from 1 to 10. I'm a 10. God bless me. It's not the time to be a perfect 10 in life, I tell you. um, it's my only score of perfect 10 in life. No! Um, but,
Oh my
if
goodness.
you've got a score of like 7, 8, 9, 10, you probably want to be starting to think about a bright line rule for sugar as opposed
Mm.
to I'm going to try to moderate. And again, it's just back to the like, if you're smoking 3 packs a day and you got lung cancer, cutting back your cigarettes isn't the thing, right? You're going to need
Mhm.
to quit,
Mhm.
right? But not everybody needs to quit. So, um, yeah, those are some of the basics around
Mhm.
sugar. And then watch your
Mm.
flour consumption, because flour comes right back in if you decrease sugar, you'll find yourself eating pasta, pot stickers, quesadillas, mac and cheese. You'll start finding yourself eating flour-based products because flour's not as potent as sugar, but it hits the same receptors in the same way. And it
Mhm.
dysregulates the glucose system and hits the dopamine receptors as well. So that's why in Bright Line Eating, it's sugar and flour, because I don't
Mhm.
find people successfully losing their weight or getting their food freedom unless they get rid of both. So Yeah,
Mm-hmm.
that's the
Mm.
long and the short of it.
So good. So good. You know what I love, and I want to thank you for being the advocate and being the voice and the one to disciple this movement because what's so important is, clean eating has become popular in the US. And what I feel
Mhm.
personally is that when things become popular in the US, we need to watch out because at that point, we should watch out. Once they realize that there is money to be made in a message and in a movement, then we start to see that it gets diluted and starts to get, watered down with
Mhm.
other, preservatives and things
Yeah.
to help make the market capitalize and make the U.S. capitalize off of it. So, what you've given us again, when you talk about food freedom and self-authorship, is the ability to go and design and construct a lifestyle that we're able to maintain regardless of what the market says, regardless of what vegetables the
That's
hot
right.
one and the top seller. We still have the ability to see and recognize what is in the best interest for our bodies and make personal choices that we can actually, pass down to our children. I think that's probably the best legacy we can offer them is food freedom and financial freedom too, that I think
Yeah.
will take them very far in life,
Yeah.
right? We'll give them options.
Totally.
Yeah, yeah.
Totally. Yes.
So I could hold you forever because not only are you amazing and your story just, geez, your story is just astounding and it is so worth honoring. And your devotion, the passion that you have, that you've built over time, I just want to, applaud you for that. Um, you give hope. It's bigger than food. You have given hope to so many, and when you bring voice to the things that you've overcome and when you recognize that you have the power to transform so many lives. So I just want to give you roses for
Mm.
taking authorship of your legacy and making it so impactful. I really
Thank you.
truly your story, I was just like, okay, don't cry because she's like on the other side and she's pom-pommed up, she's full cheerleading now, but I don't want to overlook the fact that you overcame such a deep dark era in your life.
Mm. Thank you, Sybil.
Yeah, yeah. So I know where we can take the quiz, but where can they keep up with you? Where can they purchase the book? How can they follow you on social?
Totally. Probably the best way is just to go to brightlineeating.com, brightlineeating.com. And you can take the quiz there. You can do everything there and you can join the Brightline Eating membership there. It's just $20 a month. And I
Mm,
walk you step by step with a fresh start. You don't need to know anything to get started. I just take you from square zero to square one to square two to square three and hold your hand through the whole thing. And once you take the quiz, you'll be on my email list. And every
mhm.
week, every Wednesday, I put out a free vlog, a free video blog. So, and beneath that is all the social links and all that sort of stuff. So really I just want to keep it really simple for people. Just go to brightlineeating.com. So that's BRIGHTLINE, brightlineeating.com. Simple.
Awesome. Awesome. Thank you so much, Dr. Thompson. We appreciate you. Great girlfriends, make sure you grab your copy of REZOOM. It's sold everywhere books are sold. And I want to thank you for being a great girlfriend.
Thank you so much, Sybil. It's been delightful being with you today.
All right, great girlfriends. Did you enjoy this week's episode of the podcast? If so, would you please give us your amazing review on iTunes? Every single review helps another great girlfriend get plugged into the podcast and the community. Speaking of community, make sure you join our Facebook group at The Great Girlfriends. Follow us on Instagram at The Great Girlfriends and on Twitter at @the_great GFS. I'm Sybil Amuti and I'm out. Peace.